guess the mitzvah is the memale, and the heart is the soft, or the other way around. I don't know.
Not sure. Do that. Should I press this button, or you did already?
No, sorry. Already
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Woo!
Oh no!
We're going? We're good? We're on. All right, let's quickly remind ourselves what we were talking about from yesterday. So, we spoke about the idea that while Yaakov brings the Or Ein Sof into Atzilus, it's a big opener. Nonetheless, because the idea that he breaks through and brings the infinite across the side of the Tzimtzum, and the other side of the Tzimtzum, yeah, there you go. And we said that in doing so, he reaches this place called Tiferes HaNe'elam, the idea of Tiferes, that it mixes Chesed and Gevura in its root. The idea is that in the essence, of course, we said the all opposites are united as one. Therefore, he's able to make the infinite and the finite reside somehow together, the miraculous action of Yaakov, Ufaratzta. And therefore, he's able to bring the original Or Ein Sof into the place of the finite worlds, but only up until Atzilus. Right? So he fuses together, we said, Giloi and Tzimtzum, and makes them reside at the same time. However, then in the lower worlds of Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, we said that this is where Yosef comes in. Yosef extends Yaakov's power and quality. It's really still, we said, Yaakov's quality, because Yaakov's Indian is Ufaratzta. He's going to break forth all boundaries. But Yosef extends this into the realm of Bia. What is the need for fusing opposites together in the lower worlds? Because there becomes a new dichotomy that takes place in the lower worlds, when you enter into the lower worlds. The dichotomy to begin with was a dichotomy between darkness and light. Darkness and light cannot reside together, and then suddenly Yaakov makes them dwell in the same place. But going down further, now you have a dichotomy between different aspects of light itself. Certain light cannot shine to the worlds, right? So the Or Ein Sof itself is in a state of limitation, and that it cannot be experienced by the lower worlds of Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, because they don't have kelim for it. The reason why Atzilus could experience it is because the spheres of Atzilus are in a completely different plane where they're actually vessels to experience the light. So the idea that when you bring out vessels which are so low they can't experience the light, it shows another limitation now on the Or Ein Sof. It's incapable of shining to a place which is not a kli for it. The idea of Yaakov, and by extension Yosef, is to undo all these boundaries, and therefore he's able to bring the light of the Or Ein Sof into a state of hislavshus, we said, which is in clothing it into the perspective of the lower worlds. And this is his contribution, basically, right? That's what we said that Yosef's up to over there. Okay, I think that's pretty much where we left off yesterday. Should sound familiar, correct? One last point that we mentioned was, where does Yosef get this quality of fusing opposites together? We said it comes because of what's called the Gamar Hashpa, right? The ultimate simcha of Hashem is not found in the beginning of the Hashpa or in the middle of the Hashpa, but like we said, like a person creates a Suda for his son's wedding feast, he's only going to have the real simcha of this feast when the guests have eaten and been satisfied, right? While the food is on the tables and all this, there's a type of simcha, but it's not the completion of his simcha. So when you get to the idea of the completing of the hashpah, unearths the essence of the giver, and therefore the essence of the giver, right, is reaching the essence of Hashem. That's where you undo any types of limitations, right? Because if you get to the source of the light, all right, this is actually something that we said yesterday, which was complicated. Let's review it for a second. I think it worked out well with my little analogy here of the idea that in thought, the earth was created before the heavens, and indeed, the heavens were created before the earth. So it winds up with a little sandwich, a heaven sandwich, right? If you look at the four levels, you have, on the top, you have the earth, which is first in thought, And what we said really is it's not only first in thought, it precedes what's first in thought. Because the first thing that actually comes out as a revelation is the heavenly idea that stems forth from the essential essence of Hashem. So that's called the actual heaven, the earth, and then the first heaven, which you could call the Or Ein Sof. Then you start to get to the heaven and the earth, which is how the world is created in actual deed. It starts with the heaven and it concludes with the earth. And there you have, instead of the Or Ein Sof, you have the contracted aspect of the Or Ein Sof, which is what we're saying, like the heaven as which is the Kav basically, as it makes its way down to creation, and then finally you get to the end, which is the earth again. So you have earth, heaven, heaven, earth. Before I move on, does everyone understand what I'm trying to get to with that?
Not sure why the heaven, why the earth, we're saying is before thought. It's the first in thought.
Okay, so that's one of the chidushim of this mimer. He explains. He says it's brought in other places, but he explains when it says sof ma'isa b'machshava techila, he puts a little twist on it. He says what's last indeed is not just what's first in thought; it's what's first before thought.
Why are we saying before thought?
Because he's explaining. This is the whole point. Because he's explaining what the last indeed earth actually connects you to. It doesn't just connect you to what's first in thought. It actually connects to that which precedes thought. And so just if you work with that for 1 second, he doesn't bring this heaven earth thing. I brought it in order to understand it and hopefully explain it to you, right? So this is the whole reason why I'm bringing this, to explain this point. So the idea, but anyway, there's another concept where we do speak about the earth precedes the heavens above, and then the heavens precedes the earth on the way down when it comes to the actual time of creation. These are two verses in the Torah which seem to contradict each other. One says that heaven precedes earth, one that says that earth precedes heaven. And the way that Chassidus puts together is that there's two processes, right? One starts with Hashem in mind, and one in deed. So far, so good.
So, sorry, just really quick. So the preceding thought thing, it's kind of like, I mean, you were saying how this connects to the essential essence. Is that kind of like, I mean, the same way that your thoughts don't just come from nowhere. They're kind of like an outgrowth
of you.
Essential nature
you.
Of you.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's not just the conception of the idea, but
right.
It's like it actually speaks to the earlier thing, where the idea grows out of.
Exactly. The source.
Connecting to the essence.
Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to say. So let me try and put it into the language that we're working with, right? We said you have the essence of the light, and the extension of the light, right? So what we're going to put our variables in here is the essence goes on the earth. The original earth is basically something deep inside of Hashem's essence that has not yet even come to a state of revelation as any light. Then you have the first level of heaven, is sort of the infinite light that comes out of Hashem, right? It's the Or Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. And then you have that's earth, heaven in the realm of thought. Then you have heaven, earth. What that's going to be is the Kav, the finite light. And then finally it gets to the bottom where it creates the actual earth. So those are our variables, yes? So if you recall, what our problem is that when it comes to the light, there becomes a sort of a limitation, because the infinite light is limited suddenly because it can't go into the finite places. So there's a dichotomy between the two levels of heaven, as it were, right? One level of heaven is called Sovev, because it's infinite light. One level of heaven is the Kav. It's in a state of Hislavshus. It can be experienced by the world, but they're in a state of conflict with each other. Right? The infinite light cannot come into a state of Hislavshus, right? And so we said, when can they? When it gets to the bottom of the hashpah, when things go down all the way, when the real simcha of the giver, right, which is Hashem, creator of heavens and earth, when he'll tap into his true essential simcha, right, then this is when his ultimate essence is shining. And when does that come out? Only at the completion of the hashpah, which means when he finally gets down to the earth, right, and all this light is actually eaten by the guests at the table, which means basically it's reached the bottom of its extension. What that does is it brings him back up to his essential pleasure, which is the essence before both levels of light. It's the original earth. That's what we mean. It's the thought which precedes the thought. Right? Hold on a second. You with me there so far? when you get to that place, now you go into the essence which precedes both heavens. Now you can join both heavens together because you got to a place which is outside of the limitations of the heavens. It's the creator of the heavens. So it had inside of it both the Or Ein Sof and the finite light. So if it had them both together at the same time, then it's also able to bring them forth both together at the same time. It can mix their opposites. And that's the idea, that it can make the infinite light have the qualities of the finite light. It can make it go into some other entity and be experienced, right? Because you've gotten to the bottom earth, you access the top earth, which is beyond both lights. It therefore can mix those two lights together. And this happens when you reach the end of the hashpah. You tap into the essential simcha of the giver, and he's able to therefore mix opposites together. You following this? Follow. Any questions on this? Noam, you with me somehow?
Not completely, actually. No.
Okay, so you got to ask a question, otherwise I wouldn't know where to do that again. I'm happy to repeat it. It's not so simple. Maybe it would help all of us, but
Can you say more about the hashpah?
the hashpah is basically the light, right? The completion of the hashpah, we said in a metaphor yesterday, when a giver wants to give, he's not reached his ultimate sense of satisfaction and happiness with that giving until he gets to the completion of that giving, which is when it's actually internalized by the receiver. So he can put the wedding feast on the table, he can make the plates, right? But until they actually eat it and are satisfied, he's not satisfied with his giving. So we're saying that the Or Ein Sof is Hashem's giving. And it even continues towards the middle of his giving with the kav. But until that light is going to be internalized by the receivers, Hashem has not really found his true joy. When he does find his true joy in this giving, it taps into his essence, and therefore something essential is unleashed, which is able to fuse two opposites together. In this case, when it comes to Yosef's part in this, because Yosef's the end of the hashpah, when it gets down to Bri Yitzir Nasiya, it makes it so the two lights, which were in a state of conflict with each other, can reside harmoniously together, i.e. infinite light, but nonetheless being able to be experienced. Noam?
I wasn't so fond of my question after all. But if we could get a picture, I'm not fully following.
Okay. Yeah, I keep giving the kitzer there. But, yeah, you have a question?
My question is that we learned in yesterday's talking that Hashem's thought, intelligence, and action is all one thing. And while he's up there with Or Ein Sof, there's nothing else but. But once he had the thought of creating the world, that's when this actually happens, which would have made it would have been instantaneous, right? So how can we go above the thought if everything that once he has an idea, is everything else instantaneous?
Because even though we're saying that in the Tanya, we're saying his midos are united with him, right? That's what it's saying, that's what you're referring to. But nonetheless, there's still another thing, so to speak, that's united with him. In other words, there's something called, before Hashem has what's the Eliyas Haratzon, the first initial will, before it comes up in Hashem's mind, we discuss a state of God like that. Now, even though after it comes up in his mind, this will and all the spheros, we say that it's not similar to the way it comes up in your mind, because when it comes up in your mind, you and your thoughts are two different things, whereas Hashem, they're one. It's a type of miraculous unity that we can't really understand. There's still such a thing as Hashem before the light and Hashem after the light, right? The essence can produce light, right? And even when the light comes out, we're saying like it's one with God, but before it produces light, Hashem has an essential place which is not only light, it's light and darkness together, right? So there is a level preceding, and specifically as what you're saying is true. Because it's one, and in Hashem, the light and the darkness all in his essence as one. That's why he's able to fuse them together when they come out. That's why there could be this fusing of opposites. Yeah.
What was the lesson that we used to re-understand the Sof Maaseh Machshavat Tefillah? Like what was
The actual words he said there?
to say that it was before thought. How was that
He says that he just says that. Here, I'll point you to it. Let's see where you can find that. I think it's actually on page Kuf Ches. Right? Second line down. He says, Sov Masa Hu Kabbalas Hashpah. And this reaches to the Machshava Techila, which means, Techila Shalifnei V'Lamayla Metechila HaMachshava. It's a beginning, i.e. above the beginning of the thought. Because the thought is the source of the Shefa, and we're going to a place which precedes the source of the Shefa. That's why it's able to basically, because the source of the Shefa is infinite, and then it goes into the Kav, which is finite. They become opposites. If you go to the source of the Shefa, it contains both the infinite and the finite at the same time. It can therefore make them, express them as one, if it so desires. Which is the Kitzer, basically. No. So you have essence. So it's heaven, earth, heaven, heaven, earth, right? You understand why it's like that? Because by Hashem, what was first? First he wanted the earth. That was his original intention. He said, oh, but I need the heavens in order to do that, right? And then when he actually starts to make it, he's like, what do I need? What do I need here? Give me some heavens, and that will produce the earth. So there's actually two verses in the Torah. One says heavens precede the earth. One says the earth precedes the heavens, and that's how Chassidus puts together. In Hashem's thought, it was first earth and then heaven, and then when he actually got to it, it was first heaven and then earth, right? And now what we're saying is the heaven, even the higher heaven, is the source of the Shefa. It's the beginning of all the Shefa coming out, right? Because the earth is like some essential inner desire which has not yet produced even its original thought, right? It's just, so the first heaven is original thought. The second heaven, so to speak, is sort of his secondary thought, and then you finally get to the earth. So when you finish the Shefa, it comes all the way down to the earth, where it taps into the earth above. The earth above precedes all the light, and therefore it holds inside of it both types of light, which are oppositional when they come out, but in their source they're residing as one. If you can get them to come out as they are in their source, it also undoes the oppositional reality of them when they're in their expressed state. And how does that turn out? Infinite light, which precedingly could not be internalized by vessels, it says now it can. I'm going to take away this limitation of infinite light, that it can also be experienced. And that happens in Bia, and this is the level of Yosef. Got it?
You said that heavens is the source of Shefa. So what is the earth that's before it?
That goes on the essence, right? It's like the essence of Hashem before even the essence of the light, right? It's the source of the Shefa is not actually the essence of God, right?
So, and again, it's earth, heaven, heaven's earth.
Yeah.
Earth as an idea, heavens as an idea, heaven's the actual thing, and earth the actual
Yes.
It's cool because you say Sof Ma'aseh, Machshavat Techila, so you put the Sof Ma'aseh first,
Exactly.
which is the same as Machshavat Techila.
The machshava before the
No, before Machshavat Techila, they're different.
Yeah, but the way you say Sof Ma'aseh, Machshavat Techila, so you put the Sof Ma'aseh, the statement of Sof Ma'aseh, you put it before the Machshavat Techila. Even though it comes after, but really it is the Machshavat Techila in the source.
With Yaakov,
That's what it
it
says.
looks like with Yosef, you get the garment.
It comes out as a deed and it
Right.
ends up becoming
You get the
source.
garment, which is like what your thought, speech, and action.
Right. That's right.
Yaakov,
That's right.
what do you get?
Which doesn't make any sense.
That's
So-
like the garment.
So Yaakov is like the body itself. Right? Yaakov, he actually is saying a very awesome thing, which I believe David brought up yesterday. Yosef's known for his garment, right? His Technicolor dream coat. So the garments are what? Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya, right? The thought, speech, and action in the higher, like with God's thought, speech, and action are the worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya. And this is exactly what Yosef does. He brings godliness, godly garments, into those lower worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya. Yaakov, on the other hand, is called the body. Yaakov's very names, right, is called Yud Akev, which means that from the head to the foot, to the foot. And he represents bringing the divinity into the world of Atzilus. Yosef continues it into the garment. Beautiful. All right, so we are going to continue. Look, this is probably one of the harder mimers we've done since our original group here, but I think we're getting it. It's technical stuff. We're getting in there. Got to be a man. Okay. let's start with Os Vav. We're going to take this whole thing into a yet slipperier slope. Try and say that 10 times fast. Okay, we got all the time we need. Ready? Os Vav. Do you have a copy of the mimer? Is there an extra one lying around? Yeah. Give that man a copy. Mamshich ba mimer. Okay, it does get a little complicated here. Now it gets a little complicated. So he says he's going to continue in the mimer. There is a section there which states that Yaakov hu tefillin shel rosh, v'Yosef hu tefillin shel yad. Right? Don't forget, there's a bar mitzvah mimer. So he's explaining this new mitzvah that his son Yosef is going to be wearing. Although I believe that the Frierdiker Rebbe actually started putting on tefillin like 2 years before his bar mitzvah. What's that?
Without a bracha?
Yeah, without a bracha. It's an unusual thing. Our custom is to do it like a month before, 2 months before. Okay, so Yaakov is tefillin shel rosh, Yosef is tefillin shel yad. This is what it says in the Shalah. Ki al yidei tefillin shel rosh, naisa chibor, tefillin milashin yischabros. This is a beautiful thing. Tefillin, the word tefillin means to connect. It means the to join two things together. That's what the word tefillin means. So what is the tefillin shel rosh? What's the joining at the state of the head? Orein sof hamatzil ima netzalim, right? It's joining the head, so to speak, which is the Orein sof, the infinite light which preceded the tzimtzum, shall now be joined with the worlds after the tzimtzum, namely the world of Atzilus. They're called the netzalim. Just like the things in creation are called the nivraim, the creations, the entities in Atzilus are called the netzalim, those which were emanated. Which we're saying that Yaakov's job was to join the Orein Sof and with infinite light to that which comes after the Tzimtzum, finite light, and make the finite and the infinite reside together. So this is called the tefillin, right? The joining of the Rosh, of the higher world. In other words, what he does is he adds extra light into Abba, Ima, and Za of Atzilus, which is another way of saying the spheros of Atzilus, right? All the different aspects of Atzilus. Which means to say, if you think about it, that Atzilus was not the Atzilus that we have come to know and love before Yaakov lived in the world, right? Before even really Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. In other words, the idea is that after the Tzimtzum, if you remember the original mimer we're speaking about, there was stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Stage 1 was the Orein Sof, which does not allow room for any worlds. Stage 2 was the room for the Kav in its limited nature, which made worlds which were sort of devoid of Elokus. And then stage 3 was returning the infinite light into those worlds. So it turns out that even Atzilus, until stage 3 came along and joined infinity to the worlds, it wasn't the type of Atzilus that you normally think of, that it's entirely divine, because he's saying that Yaakov joined the Orein Sof into all the spheres of Atzilus. Fine. The al yidei tefillin shel yad, shu b'malchus, right? The tefillin shel yad represents the Indian of malchus, because he said before that he joined the Orein Sof with Abba, Ima, and Za. He left out malchus. Malchus is now going to be like the source of Bria Tzir Nasiya. So when there's the tefillin shel yad is malchus, how do you know? Because it says ukshartem leos al yadcha. Regarding the hand tefillin, it says you shall bind them as a sign on your hand. And the word for hand there is strangely has an extra hey at the end, which means yad kahei, which means it's coming to tell you it's the weak hand. That's where we learn it's supposed to be the left hand. The yad kahei hi malchus. But the weak hand also is like a symbolic level called malchus. In other words, the lowest of the spheros in Atzilus. So the tefillin shel yad represents binding the Orein Sof with the kelim, right, of malchus, of Atzilus. And therefore, through that, once you've joined godliness with malchus, that's another way of saying you've joined godliness with the lower worlds of the Nivroim, because malchus is the source of Bria Tzir Nasiya. So through the tefillin shel rosh, you fuse the Orein Sof, so to speak, the head, which is all the other spheres of Atzilus, and through the tefillin shel yad, you join the Or Ein Sof with the hand, which is really the worlds of creation through Malchus of Atzilus. The Zeu Mash Tefillin Shel Rosh Nikra B'Shem Pe'er. And that's why we find that Tefillin Shel Rosh are called in the Pasuk Pe'er, which means from the word Tiferes actually, which means beauty, which is of whose Midah is Tiferes? Yaakov, right? Kind of goes well, right? The Tefillin Shel Rosh, which Yaakov essentially represents, are called Pe'er, which also means beautification. And what is beautification? Kemo Tachshit Sha'adam Iskashed Bo. It's not a garment. Pe'er is called a jewelry that a person beautifies himself with. The idea of a jewelry is basically you don't cover the body. The jewelry highlights the body and actually winds up showing you the body. In other words, like we're saying that Yaakov brought the Or Ein Sof into the body of the spheres of Atzilus, it's like he decorated them. Not with garments which conceal them, but with jewelry which amplifies, basically, it makes the body look good. It doesn't take away the vision of the body. So therefore it's called the Tefillin Shel Rosh, which represents Yaakov, which represents the fusion of God infinite with Atzilus, is called Pe'er. Whereas the Tefillin Shel Yad, Hem Rak Levush. The Tefillin Shel Yad are not called Pe'er, right? It's not a jewelry. It's basically called a garment. And it comes in regarding Hilchos Shabbos, whether you can wear them on Shabbos to bring them home if they're lost, because are they called a garment or are they just Stam Muksa? Tefillin are called a garment, right? But in this capacity, when it's on the arm, it's not such a beautification. It's just a garment. You're wearing something. You're not beautifying yourself with jewelry. So therefore, just like we said, Yosef and his technicolored garment, right? It's connected with the aspect of garbing the light into the lower worlds. Ki bia hem levushim. Because Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya are not the body, they are the garments. The Eser spheres d'Atzilus, Nikr B'Shem Tikunin, whereas the 10 spheres of Atzilus, they're not called garments, they're actually called Tikunin. If you look at the Pesach Eliyahu that we say before Shabbos, and also there's a whole mimer of the Alter Rebbe about this topic where he explains the difference of why it says that this 10 spheres are called Tikunin, and then they're also called garments, because when they're called Tikunin, which basically means jewelry, right? Tikunin means to fix, right? But the idea of jewelry is that it like sort of fixes and makes beautiful the body. Whereas garments is already the world of Bria Tzir Nasiya, when the body is no longer being made beautiful, it's being covered over. The clothes are beautiful, the clothing, the body may become beautified, but not because of itself, because it's now invested into something else. Which, if the garments are beautiful, they can also represent godliness, like Yosef is doing, but it's in a lower world. It's actually hiding the body and sending its beauty down into a lower dimension. Noam?
Got a definition-based question. So, M and Z, that is part of M, yeah?
I didn't hear you.
So, Ab and M and Z,
Yes.
that is part of M.
That's part of
M.
mother?
Yeah. No, I'm asking.
No. Abba, Ima, and Za.
Right. So
It's father, mother, and the 6 midos. Those refer to the spheres of Atzilus before Malchus.
Right, so that is in the category of mother?
Why are we saying mother all of a sudden?
I'm asking.
But why? Where did you get the idea of mother from? Did I mention that?
Father, mother, Za, no?
So why would father and Za be in the category of mother? I'm trying to figure out. Why is all of that being categorized as mother suddenly?
I'm just asking which sphere is in which category.
Oh, so Abba is Chochmah, mother is Bina, Za is the 6 midos.
Yeah, then what happened to that is my question.
Oh, did you say dot?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said aim. I don't know. I was lost.
Oh.
No, dot. Okay, dot is not counted in many different scenarios. In general, when we talk about the 10 spheres as they correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? We talk about how it's Chochmah, Bina, the Midos, and Malchus. Das is left out. It's kind of a deep reason why that is, but in short, it's because Das is not like a thing in its own right. It's not really. It's a functional sphera who serves to connect 2 levels, right? So basically, it's not the mother or the father. It's the joining of the mother and the father together, right? It's not the. It also is. There's Das Elyon, there's Das Tachton. There's also a Das which fuses the mind and the heart, right? It's both between Chochmah and Bina and it's between the mind and the heart. So it's not a thing, it's the connection between the mind and the heart. So it's in terms of when we're like defining the roles of the Yud K, the Vav K, right? It's not one of those things. It's something which, and that's why we also don't count Keser, right? We say we either count Keser or Das, actually, I should put it like that. There's really, if you count them all, there's really 11 spheros, but we always say there's 10 spheros, not 9 and not 11, right? Which means you don't take Keser and Das out, and you don't put Keser and Das in. You only have one or the other. Right? So what's the idea behind that? When Keser is in, it shows that there is a light which is makif, and therefore there's not really an ability to join the two aspects together, because the light which would join them together, like Chochmah and Bina, where Das is supposed to unify, when Keser is in the game, there is no Das, right? Because the idea of Das is that you've internalized something, and when Keser's there, it shows that you have not internalized it. Since you haven't internalized it, you can't make the fusion between Chochmah and Bina. If you have internalized it, Keser's not there, Das is there, because you've internalized it and made the fusion. That's basically the story of yeah. Okay, but that's neither here nor there. No, it's a good piece of information though. Back to our plot, however, that we have these two different levels called tikkunim and levushim. Tikkunim are this beautification concept of the pe'er, the head tefillin, which represents the really bringing forth the body, the spheres themselves, and then the levushim is merely a garment, the hand tefillin, which is the notion of bringing the Or Ein Sof down into the level of garment, which is Bria Tzir Nasiya. V'zeu sheYaakov hu tefillin shel Rosh, and Yosef tefillin shel Yad. This that Yaakov is the Rosh and Yosef is the Yad, because it makes sense. Yaakov hu abriach hatichon shemabriach mechaber Or Ein Sof imanei atzalim. Yaakov is called the middle beam. Remember we spoke about that a couple times. In the Mishkan there was the middle beam that connected one end to the other of the Mishkan, right? And this is Yaakov, who's the middle of the Avos. He represents the central column in the spheres between right and left. He's the center, and he therefore joins the middle beam, goes to the highest place to the lowest place. He's able to join the high to the low. He's able to bring the Or Ein Sof and connect it with the world of Atzilus, which is in this capacity considered to be the low, right? We said before, the heights of heaven versus the lowest aspect of heaven. Albeit he's still only dealing with heaven, but he's able to connect the heights of heaven with the bottom of heaven, which is connected with Atzilus. That's Tefillin Shel Rosh. Yosef hu mechaber. Yosef is also a joiner of things. Where do we see this now? Yosef, before his name was just that he adds onto Yaakov. But here we see that in Yosef himself, in his definition and description in the Torah, he's also called a fuser of things. Why? Because he's called Ben Porat Yosef. What does that mean in the pasuk? Ben Porat Yosef. We see that he's in the blessings that are given to him.
Son of the beauty of Yosef.
Is it similar
Porat.
to Por, the hair?
No, it has somewhat. It has different letters, but somewhat. But it has different meanings. It's not going to get one meaning out of this, and it's definitely like a phrase that we find that is very popular amongst the Sephardim when they want to bless someone, and like without that they shouldn't have an ayin hara. That's Ben Porat Yosef. But what it literally means is like from the word peru ravu, right? That you're basically he was filled with the ability to procreate, right? Porat, but Porat. Also, if you switch around the letters, like it says in the Alter Rebbe explains in Torah Or, Porat is the osios, the same letters as Tofer, which means to sow. He was a sower, right? And the simple meaning is that he was like a dream interpreter. He could like sew ideas together. But here we're using it in a very Kabbalistic sense, that to sew means to bring two pieces of fabric and put them together and make them one. So just like Yaakov was a joiner of two opposite levels, so too, Ben Porat, Tofer, Yosef, he's able to sew together the Or Ein Sof, but this time with the Levushim, with the worlds of Bria Tzir and Asiya. So we see Tefillin Shel Rosh, Tefillin Shel Yad, Yaakov, Yosef. This is the Shalah, very beautiful. That wasn't the hard part. Okay? Yeah.
Because we connected the Rosh, we said that it's Yaakov, which goes on Tiferet, and we gave an analogy of jewelry.
Right.
Right? Is there a connection to Keter then? Because Keter is actually like the crown, and it's on the top, like the Rosh guess it's also.
Tefillin shel rosh very often has association with keter. Here he's not really, he's not necessarily pointing that out, right? That's not his point here. Here he's more saying that it's connected with the head, right? Not the crown on the head.
Connecting it to Tiferet.
I think what he's saying is that you have head and arm is basically the difference between the 9 spheres of Atzilus versus the 10th sphere of Atzilus. It's like the head and the arm, right? So he's saying that there's fusing of God to the head, and there's fusing of God to the arm, right? Which is another way of saying fusing of God to Atzilus and fusing of God to Biyah. Tzrich lahavin. We have to understand. Since you can't really fuse together godliness with the lower worlds until you first fuse them together with the godliness of the higher worlds, right? Yaakov has to do his business seemingly before Yosef. Lama makdimim hanachas tefillin shel yad letefillin shel rosh? This is a good question. Why then do we, in our process, it's like what you said, sof maisa, yeah? Why then do we first put on the tefillin shel yad and only then put on the tefillin shel rosh? It seems like it's opposite. When God seemingly put on tefillin, right? He would have put on he first fused with the rosh and then he fused with the hand. When we put on tefillin, we take the opposite order.
Exactly, you don't complete it, right?
What's that?
That's the point.
But also with Chabad, you would have thought that the Chabad that you'd first start with.
Right,
the rosh.
exactly. What's that?
But we don't complete it. We put it on, we stop, we put the head, we go back.
We don't complete it, but the truth is we in a certain sense, you do complete it because there's a mitzvah there's 2 mitzvahs that you're doing, right? So you make a bracha on the first one. All this tying and everything is nice, but it's not actually, it's a beautification of the mitzvah. If you just put it on and make the bracha and seal it, you did the mitzvah. Now, you made the bracha for even the second mitzvah, as long as you don't make an interruption. But the mitzvah of tefillin shel yad, you did complete upon making the bracha and fastening it to your arm. So you do it first, right? You're right, you're right that there's a head, and then, like, Kabbalistically speaking, we have this whole other process which does show that the completion is in the hand, and right. But really, it starts with the arm, and that's strange, since what we're saying in terms of the divine flow, you can't start with a unification that happens in Biyah. You have to start with the unification that happens in Atzilus.
It's also interesting that in putting it on the hand one, there's an intent to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It shouldn't show that came first in a way. So it's almost like the hidden truth that's the first one.
Yeah.
But also, that's just from Hashem's point of view. From our point of view, the only way we can do is by lifting up this world into heavens.
You're saying that.
From Hashem's perspective, it's heavens first and then the
But
world.
how does Hashem put on his tefillin? Hashem, right? You said the bar mitzvah. I remember tefillin demar dalma. There's Hashem puts on tefillin. So, but he also puts on the tefillin shel yad first. Yeah, he does the mitzvah. So it's an interesting thing. Fine, let's look into it. Yesh lomer habir b'zeh al pi yidua. So let's hold that question for a second, and first let's explain the mitzvahs da Hakadosh Baruch Hu shenaisim al yidei Yisrael mekayimim es mitzvahs hem nailim yosem mitzvahs da Hakadosh Baruch Hu kamo hem mitzad atzmam. So this is like a whole conversation he just launches us into, but basically he does say that Hashem does the mitzvahs, but he actually says Hashem does the mitzvahs in 2 different ways. There's the mitzvah that Hashem does because we do the mitzvah. And that's a higher level of Hashem's performance of the mitzvah than Hashem doing the mitzvah on his own. That's what he says here, right? That the mitzvah that's accomplished by Hashem through us performing the mitzvah is a higher level than the mitzvah that Hashem performs when he does it on his own. Right? So when you put on tefillin, Hashem puts on tefillin. But Hashem also puts on tefillin without you. But when you put on tefillin, Hashem puts on tefillin, it's a higher level of Hashem's tefillin than when he does it without you. Right? The yesh lahosif. And we can add the mitzvahs to fill in that when it comes to the mitzvah of tefillin. Now this is true about all mitzvahs, right? All mitzvahs, Hashem does them, you do them, but when you do them, it's a higher level than Hashem does them by themselves. That's true about all mitzvahs. But when it comes to tefillin, inyan zeh hu biyoser. It's even more so. It's highlighted that Hashem's performance of it is greater through you. Why? The Mekevon Tefillin the Ma'iri Alma, because the Tefillin of the Master of the World, Ma Kasiv B'hu. Do you remember what it says in there? What does it say in Hashem's Tefillin?
Was like my nation.
Yes. His tefillin are slightly different than ours, which is it's a question in its own right. Hashem has in his boxes of tefillin, lahavdil, he has a different pasuk than we do. We have Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, etc., and others. He has a praise of us. Mi ka'amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. Who is like you, the Jewish people, one nation on earth?
On his own tefillin that he was without us doing it?
What's that?
On his own tefillin that he was without us doing it?
Yes, this is his tefillin have us in them, right? So in other words, he's priding himself on us. We're priding ourselves on Hashem when we put on tefillin. We're like praising Hashem. He is praising us when he puts on his tefillin. The kuch, what's that?
I was going to ask you, does that mean that, is that an example of like Sofman about tefillah, that he like is even thinking this about us before we exist? He wraps this tefillin as, they say the Torah was created before the world, and he can also create this tefillin as part of the Torah and say, let's create a nation who's like you.
Yeah. It's all part of the same conversation, absolutely. The kucha brichu mishtabeach b'shabchayu di Yisrael. Hashem is praised through the praise of the Jewish people. Just like we are sort of praised because we put God on our head and we say Hashem Echad, we're praised by praising Hashem. Hashem is praised, he's like made beautiful by praising us. So therefore, just like, even though in every mitzvah, Hashem does it better by us doing it. He does it with us and it's a higher level. By tefillin, he's saying it's even more so because the tefillin of Hashem, the whole concept of them is the praise of Israel. Right? So it's for sure it's even more so when it comes to Hashem putting on tefillin, when in his tefillin, it's all about us. So if the idea of him doing a mitzvah is improved by us doing it, how much more so tefillin, which is anyway a mitzvah, which is praising us. Does that make sense? When the fact that in Hashem's tefillin it highlights the Jewish people, that's even more sort of evidence that in this mitzvah, it's highlighted this idea that his mitzvahs are beautified more when we do them. In other words, that if Hashem would do it on his own, it's not as great as when he does it when we do it, right? Because the Jewish people somehow are praiseworthy in some way that they add something to Hashem. This is highlighted and seen even more in the mitzvah of tefillin, when it actually says in his tefillin, the Jewish people are great, right? Showing that there's an improvement, so to speak, on Hashem's ability to bring light into the world through us. This is true about every mitzvah, but in tefillin, it's written in the head. It's like the Jews are great. Obviously,